Well, hello everybody and welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to make a pumpkin loaf cake or pumpkin bread, and that's going to be made in a 2-pound loaf tin. This is 9 inches by 5 inches and it's going to fill it quite nicely. If you use smaller tins, then you may have to divide the mixture a little bit or make 2 loaves. And I had my oven preheating to 165 Celsius, that's 145 Celsius with a fan, 330 Fahrenheit. And for the ingredients I have 350 grams, which is 2.5 cups of plain flour. I have 300 grams, which is 1.5 cups of caster sugar, or granulated sugar is okay, and you can use a mixture of granulated and brown sugar if you want to. I have 1 can, which is 15 ounces, which works out at 425 grams of pumpkin puree. There's nothing added, it's simply the puree from pumpkin, that's natural. I have 2 medium eggs, which would be large in the USA. I have 240 millilitres, which is 1 cup of vegetable oil. You could use any oil you want, basically. I'm using vegetable oil. And then I have a mixture of spices. I have 1.5 teaspoons of ground cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of ground ginger, half a teaspoon of ground nutmeg, 1/8 of a teaspoon of ground cloves, because cloves are very strong. If you put too much in, it will overpower everything. 1 teaspoon of baking powder, half a teaspoon of baking soda, and 1 teaspoon of salt. And the first thing I have to do is to mix all the dry ingredients apart from the sugar together. So I put the flour, and I'm only putting it into another bowl so that I don't splash it everywhere, and all the spices and baking powders and salt into the bowl, and I'm simply going to mix those around to get them nicely combined. I should say I've greased my loaf tin, and I put some parchment paper in. I'll just show it to you again. Just a strip of parchment paper like that, so that it's easier to lift out. But with this tin, it actually doesn't need it because nothing sticks to it anyway, but I've done it just to show you. And so with those ingredients mixed in, the next thing to do is to take another bowl and put the sugar and the pumpkin puree and the 2 medium eggs, which is, as I said, would be large in the USA, into the bowl, and we're going to whisk those together. Until they're combined. And with that whisk together, I'm going to add the oil, but I'm actually going to keep the whisk going and drip the oil in a fairly gentle stream until it's all a homogeneous mixture. So that's mixed together quite nicely. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add the flour, and I'm going to do that in 2 additions. So I'm going to put about half of it in, like that, And you can do this by hand. If you do it with the mixer, do it on the lowest speed you've got, because you don't want to over mix this flour. And I'm actually going to finish that off with a spatula. Because I want to make sure that I get it evenly mixed so that there's no very wet patches or areas of the batter. So that's evenly mixed. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour that into my baking tin. And I'm going to spread that around to level it off. And as you can see, this is already quite full, but it's going to rise. Okay, so with that levelled off reasonably well, I'm going to put that into the oven and I'm going to bake it for between 80 and 90 minutes. It's going to rise. It may well split along the top, but that's quite normal for this type of loaf cake. And I'm going to test it with the skewer in the centre to make sure that it comes out clean. And when it comes out clean, I'm going to take it out and let it cool down. And at that stage, I'm going to make a cream cheese frosting to go on the top. It's not necessary, you don't have to do that, but that's what I'm going to do, just for additional flavour and texture. So I'll be back with you when the cake's cooling down and I'm ready to do the frosting. I baked the pumpkin loaf cake for 90 minutes. I tested it after 80 minutes and it was just a bit damp on the skewer, so I left it for another 10 minutes. And after 90 minutes, I took it out of the oven, I let it cool in the tin for 10 minutes, then I lifted it out onto a wire rack so it could cool completely. And it did crack on top, as you can see, and I said that it probably would. But that's what it looks like. And I'm actually going to, you could cut this and eat it just as it is. And I should say you could also bake this with some raisins or some chocolate chips or something inside it if you wanted to. But what I'm going to do is just to make a simple cream cheese frosting to put onto the top. And for that I have 170 grams of cream cheese, and I also have 52 grams, which is 4 tablespoons of softened butter as well, which I'm going to put into the cream cheese. I have a teaspoon of vanilla extract, that's going in as well. And I'm just going to give that a little whisk, and then I'm going to add in 120 grams, 1 cup of icing sugar. Okay, with that whisked up a little bit, I'm just going to put the icing sugar in and mix that together. start mixing it on a low speed so that the icing sugar doesn't go cloud and form clouds everywhere. And with that whisked together, that's all I need to do to that. So I'm going to put that on top of the cake, and then I'm actually going to let it chill for a little bit. Because the cake has oil in it rather than butter, it will stay soft even when it's in the fridge. So I'm just going to pop the frosting on the top. And you can put as little or as much on as you want, obviously. And then with that spread over, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a fork, and I'm just going to drag the fork over the top like that. And I'm going to let that chill for just a little while, and then I'll come back and cut it and we'll have a taste. Well, I let the cream cheese frosting on the pumpkin loaf cake chill in the fridge just for a little bit, and then I've sliced it, and I've taken off 2 slices, and this is what it looks like inside. And here's the end piece, in fact, and this is the one I'm going to taste. So I'll just take off a bit of the cake and the frosting combined. That does taste very, very good. You have the nice spices and the fruitiness of the cake, basically, with that pumpkin puree, and then the sweetness of the frosting as well. So I think this has been a success as far as I'm concerned. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below the video and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to this recipe, and I'll put a link to it below the video as well. Then I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.